The Ramones were an American punk band that existed from 1974 to 1996. They were one of the most influential punk bands on the New York punk scene in the late 1970s, and they have been recognised in many lists of being one of the most significant rock bands ever. Unlike other punk bands, particularly British punk bands, whose style often included colourful dyed hair and ripped clothes and all sorts of interesting fashion, the Ramones adopted long hair and leather jackets as a kind of uniform. Also, all members of the band adopted stage names with the surname Ramone, even though they weren't related. So the classic lineup was Dee Ramone, Joey Ramone, Tommy Ramone, and Johnny Ramone, all of whom are now dead. Their music was categorised by fast beats, raw, simple rock, and short, abrupt songs. Later that day, they diversified into more poppy music. They released 14 albums during their existence. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the fourth album by the Ramones, and I need to give some context here, not particularly of the album in the world, but with the album with me. So I have reviewed this album before. So before I was doing these YouTube albums, I had a blog, and I was working through a list of, at that point, a list of the 1,000 greatest albums of all time. It wasn't a great list, I have to say, and the source of it wasn't as good as I think the source that I've got now is. And in that list, there was a lot of albums by the Ramones, and I reviewed several albums by the Ramones, and I never met one that I was particularly impressed by. Part of the problem here is that also they were probably my first experience of American punk through this. I'm reasonably aware of some British punk, but the American scene was mostly closed to me. I have since this come across American punk that I liked and I thought was good. For a while, my view entirely of American punk was based on the Ramones, and that wasn't a good view. I also have to say that I wonder if their earlier albums were better. I haven't actually listened to them yet, so we'll see. You'll have got the impression from that I don't like this album very much, and that's true. So I'm actually some of what I'm going to say is actually just read from the review that I wrote on my blog because I like it, and so I'm just going to reproduce some of that. It's been reworded a bit in places. So this album has the depth and substance of a cheap apple pie, the subtlety of a brick, and the imagination of a brick. I feel like I put more thought into that opening than they did into pretty much all of the lyrics. One of the defining characteristics of pop is that it's simple and accessible. So this is kind of the rebel version of pop. So it's pop with overdriven guitars, but actually this is simpler than most pop. So don't get me wrong, I don't think that simple's a bad thing. Directness and simplicity are one of the attractions of punk, so we've managed that. But so is energy and a driving feeling of kind of chaos and mayhem, and definitely not got that here. I would say that mostly this is a very sluggish album, and I felt very much like they'd been phoning it in. So there are a few songs that are better. I'd particularly draw attention to I'm Against It, Bad Brain, and I Want to Be Sedated. And before I reviewed this for the first time, or when I first listened to it for reviewing the first time, I recognised I Want to Be Sedated, so I know that song from earlier. Those three are halfway decent punk songs, but they still lack conviction, I'd say, in the way that it's been recorded and executed. Mixed into the album, there's a few slower, popper, ballady kind of stuff. So this includes a cover of Needles and Pins by the Searchers, and so this is presumably part of an attempt to appeal to a wider audience. To my mind, they really shouldn't have bothered. It's not great, they're lame. My least liked track was She's the One. So some of the cheesiest 12-year-old pining in a bedroom lyrics that I've ever come across, I think. And some of the rhymes are just so painful. However, having said that, the opening lines of the opening track rhyme 2nd Avenue with Chicken Vindaloo. So I've got to respect that. It's just a cheeky rhyme. It's great. ish. I'm Against It was my favourite track, which is basically a list of things that he's against. I found it quite tongue-in-cheek and funny. I quite like a good list song. This is a reasonable list song. Apart from the songs that are a bit on the punkier attitude in terms of the lyrics, I generally find the whole thing a bit, basically just, lame is the word that I used earlier. So, as always, I'm going to invite you to let me know what you think in the comments down below. It may well be that I've offended some hardcore Ramones fan. I'd love to know what it is that you think that makes this album great that I've missed. That's it from me for now.